A very good morning. Just past 8 by the clock. We are back again this Wednesday morning with another edition of Breakfast News. Over the next 60 minutes, this is Power Pack News, where we cut all the noise, bring you news as it happens on the ground. I'm Anil Thomas to take you through the next 60 minutes. My co-anchor, Preeti, this morning. Good morning.
Morning, Anil, and a warm morning to you too. Yes, it's a packed 1 hour show. The first comprehensive show of the morning we get for you to make sure that your morning starts on the right note. Breakfast news, and in the next 1 hour we'll get you everything that's making it to the headlines to make sure that your tea or coffee right in the morning tastes even better. First we get to the top stories.
President Ramnath Kovind to present the President's Standard to the 22nd Missile Vessel Squadron in Mumbai today. The President's Standard is the highest honor bestowed by the Supreme Commander to a military unit in recognition of the service rendered to the nation.
Lok Sabha to further consider the High Court and Supreme Court judges' salaries and conditions of service amendment bill 2021. Two other bills related to CVC and Delhi Special Police to be taken up for consideration and passage. Discussion under Rule 193 also to be taken up on climate change in the lower house.
Keeping in view the need to enforce strict actions against the deteriorating air quality of the region, Air Quality Commission orders immediate closure of NCR industries not running on gas, cleaner fuels in industrial areas despite availability of gas infrastructure and supply.
Reserve Bank of India meets today to release monetary policy. The central bank is likely to keep interest rates at a record low amidst the Omicron fever.
Encounter underway between security forces and terrorists in Shopian village. Two of the three terrorists trapped in the Czech Cholan area. Joint team of police, armies, 34RR and CRPF on the spot.
Successful flight test of vertical launch short-range surface-to-air missile. Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh congratulates DRDO, Indian Navy and industry. Says the system will further enhance defense capability of Indian naval ships against aerial threats.
US President Joe Biden warns Russian President Vladimir Putin that the West would impose strong economic and other measures on Russia if it invades Ukraine, while Putin demands guarantees NATO would not expand further eastward.
In the first test of the Ashes cricket series against Australia at Brisbane, England won the toss and elected to bat first but started with early hiccups.
And in the UEFA Champions League competition, Liverpool beat AC Milan to become the first English club to win all matches in the group stage. Well, those are the top stories this Wednesday morning. Let's get started with the top of the agenda, the Supreme Commander, President Ramnath Kovind's event.
Yes, President Kovind will present the President's Standard to the 22nd Missile Vessel Squadron, also known as the Killer Squadron, at a ceremonial parade to be held at Naval Dockyard in Mumbai. To mark the occasion, a special day cover along with a commemorative stamp will also be released by the Postal Department. Navy's Killer Squadron carried out Operation Trident, giving a decisive blow to Pakistan Navy by destroying the Karachi harbour during the 1971 war. The squadron has been in the thick of action even in modern times. The battle-ready Missile Vessel Squadron has participated in Operation Vijay, Operation Parakram and most recently during the heightened security state following the Pulwama attack, deployed within striking distance of Pakistan coast. The President's Standard is the highest honour bestowed by the Supreme Commander to a military unit in recognition of the service rendered to the nation.
My objective is to search and destroy Pakistani warships. No sacrifice should be too much for us. Let us write a new chapter in the history of our services.
Words of a military order issued by Admiral Nanda, then Chief of Naval Staff.
Well, even as the air quality in the national capital saw a slight improvement, the Commission for Air Quality Management on Tuesday decided to get tough on violators and ordered an immediate closure of industries that are not running on gas and cleaner fuels in the industrial areas in the national capital region. CAQM said that the decision to shut down such industrial units was taken in view of the very poor to severe air quality prevailing in Delhi and the national capital region. They will not be permitted to resume their operations till at least 12th of December. Notably, the CAQM had, in a directive issued on August 12th, asked the states of Haryana, Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh to inspect, audit and facilitate the switchover of industries in NCR districts to PNG or cleaner fuels if the gas supply and infrastructure is available. On November 16, the Air Quality Panel had directed all the industries in NCR where gas connectivity is available shall immediately be shifted to gas in view of the air pollution crisis, and had also asked the respective state governments to furnish industry-wise data of shifting. However, Delhi's air quality has improved to poor from very poor category, with the air quality index standing at 235 this morning.
All right, Tapas is joining us to get us more on that. Tapas, stern words coming in from the Commission for Air Quality Management. Spell out more details on that. What does the order mean? And also, when we talk of the air quality index in the national capital, above 200, to be precise, 235, what does it mean? Let us know more about the current state of air in the national capital.
Right, so this is good news coming in for Delhiites who woke up in the morning. The air quality index has actually improved. Earlier it was in the severe category, and now it has come to very poor category. Even though it is, if you take a close look, if you realize that it's still bad, but considering the impact that it had so far in the last few days, the EQ of 235, which is in the poor category, is still much better than what it was in the very poor and the severe category mark. So in that sense, there is a slight of relief, and that is mainly because of a slight breeze. And on Sunday there was the slight rainfall that took place, and after that the temperature didn't dip much, and because of that the pollutants was dispersed. So that kind of helped in the improving the quality of air quality in the national capital. Now, coming back to the concern about the air quality Commission for Air Quality Management in NCR and adjoining areas, they believe that it is high time that strict enforcement takes place. Earlier also in their earlier report, they have mentioned the fact that flying squads needs to be put in, and all these industries which are currently not running on gas or clean effluent should be checked in, and that's one of the reason why there was a lot of emphasis on that. So right now the air quality, the CAQM, the Commission for Air Quality Management in NCR, has given a slew of direction. The first and foremost is they believe that there will be flying squads which will be put in place, and they will help in identifying these what you call industries which are not running on clean influence, and all these industries which are currently are not working on working on or switch to PNG. They have been told to be shifted to PNG, and if they have not done so, they will be shut, especially in areas of state governments of Haryana, Rajasthan and UP. So, and they will be shut till 12th of this month. So that has been coming.
Okay, Tapas, it's the same old story that we see every winter season, but what's the reason? Why is fresh air such a luxury in Delhi and the national capital region?
Well, there are many. You cannot just point out to one reason per se. There are many reasons. Obviously, vehicular pollution is one of the major reasons. Stubble burning is part of a problem. It is not the problem. There are also issues. For instance, Delhi is a landlocked state, and it doesn't have a river per se, which and the river that we have, Yamuna, is in a very bad state of condition. And most of the time, the construction activities that take place, the pollutants that we are talking about, 2.5 to and 10 PM10, that actually happens mostly from the vehicular pollution and also from the construction activity that is currently going on. And with the if there is not much of wind activity that is going on in the national capital area, as I said, it is a landlocked state, and if there is not much of wind activity that is going on, these pollutants get accumulated over a period of time, and with the temperature falling in the winters, this kind of exaggerated to such a situation. But as the Delhi government, state governments, along with the central government, have been working over the period of time, we have realized the fact that in the situation that was earlier, let's say 5 years back, I remember it was so bad that even if you're standing in Akshardham or other places with the handkerchief on your mask, you end up seeing a layer of dust in your handkerchief. So from then there onwards, there is a definite change. But obviously, there must a lot that needs to be done.
All right, a slight breather when we talk of the air quality index this morning in the national capital. Thank you so much, Tapas, for joining in. We'll come back to again during the day.
Well, clearly there, that particular issue of air pollution and climate change, two sides of the same coin, if one says, or if one puts that into perspective, especially when it comes to Delhi and the world in particular. All
right, let's turn focus to Parliament today. The action in Parliament and Rajya Sabha for the consideration of the Assisted Reproductive Technology Regulation Bill 2021 will be taken up. The bill was moved by Union Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandavia yesterday for consideration and passage. Also, further consideration of the Surrogacy Regulation Bill 2020 will be taken up. Now, this bill was also moved by Dr. Mansukh Mandavia yesterday for consideration and passage. While in Lok Sabha, for the consideration of the High Court and Supreme Court judges' salaries and conditions of service amendment bill 2021 will be taken up today. The bill was moved by Union Law Minister Kiran Rijiju yesterday for consideration and passage. Also, consideration of amendments made by Rajya Sabha in the Dam Safety Bill 2019 will be taken up. Further, Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh will move the Central Vigilance Commission Amendment Bill 2021 for consideration and passage. He will also move the Delhi Special Police Establishment Amendment Bill 2021 for consideration and passage. Also, discussion under Rule 193 will be taken up on climate change. And Vikas Aarthi is joining us to get us more on that. Vikas, we've given a broad outline of the agenda that is to be taken up in both the houses today. You spell out more details when we talk of the significance of the legislative agenda that is to be taken up.
Right, Preeti, you have already told about the bills which are to be discussed and debated in both the houses. But the central question is whether Rajya Sabha will be allowed to function or not, because what we have seen yesterday, Rajya Sabha opposition MPs kept their agitation throughout the day, and because of that, these bills were supposed to be passed yesterday, but we didn't see any kind of support from opposition MPs. Though the two bills are very important, the reproductive assisted technology and the surrogacy bill. These bills are very important, and they need to, both these bills need to be discussed together. But again, the issue is whether Rajya Sabha will function normally today or not. In the Lok Sabha, an important bill related to the salaries and working condition of Supreme Court and High Court judges is also to be discussed and passed. But in Lok Sabha, we have seen the business was normal in comparison to the Rajya Sabha. But in Rajya Sabha, the issue of suspension of opposition MPs is continuing on the second week itself. So, what today will happen in the Rajya Sabha. We will have to wait and watch. So far as the issues you were talking about, like the discussion on climate change, it is a very important issue, and we have seen in the past that especially when such kind of natural calamities happen in any part of the country, these issues become more important. And when this discussion will take place on climate change today, then certainly a member of parliament, especially from this southern part of country, they will raise this issue. And we have seen some kind of natural calamities in different southern states. So we expect that these MPs from these states will raise issues during this discussion.
Also, because, purely when you look at the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha functioning, they seem to be exactly contrary to each other. But, what's the likely outcome? We are almost a little over, 10 days into this particular winter session of Parliament. What's the likely outcome? And, who's to be blamed at the end of the day? Because, there seems to be some kind of a deadlock that seems to be having no headway, or, doesn't seems to be making any directions in this particular session of Parliament.
Right, Anil. In last week, we saw that the leader of House in the Rajya Sabha, Piyush Goyal, again and again said that the government is ready to discuss the issue of suspension, but these 12 MPs will have to apologize to the chair first, because whatever they did during the monsoon session was reprehensible. And the problem here is that these MPs says that they didn't do anything wrong. So the issue here is that government is ready to discuss the issue of suspension, and they can also request to the chair to revoke this suspension. But at least these 12 suspended MPs must show some kind of remorse, because if the suspension is revoked unilaterally, then it may set a bad precedent. In fact, we saw last week Minister Piyush Goyal said that he don't understand what exactly opposition wants. If they want revocation of suspension, then what is the problem in expressing any unconditional apology to the chair? But opposition MPs are adamant, and in fact the opposition MPs are trying to escalate this issue each and every day, because on Friday we saw that some business, but on the very first day of this week, again more MPs joined these suspended MPs, and the protest is escalated. They are trying to make it more to give it more strength to this protest. So we have to wait and watch. Can there be any consensus among the government and the opposition MPs? Though the government has clearly said that they are ready to discuss this issue, and they can request chair to revoke the suspension. But at least these 12 MPs must show some kind of remorse.
All right, so we'll have to see how the days ahead pan out. Thank you so much, Vikas, for joining in with those inputs. So that was our correspondent Vikas telling us more about the legislative business that is to be taken up in both the houses. Also, let's turn focus to Jammu and Kashmir now.
Well, in Jammu and Kashmir, an encounter has broken out between the joint team of the security forces and terrorists in Shopian district today morning. 2 of the 3 terrorists have been trapped by the security forces in the Chek Cholan area of the Shopian district. The encounter is currently underway. A joint team of police, army and CRPF had launched a cordon and search operation in the Chek Cholan area of South Kashmir district following information about the presence of terrorists. The search operation turned into an encounter after the terrorists opened fire towards the security forces' positions. The security forces retaliated, triggering a gun battle that was going on when reports last came in.
Defence Research and Development Organisation DRDO successfully tested the vertical launch short-range surface-to-air missile from Integrated Test Range Chandipur off the Odisha coast on Tuesday. The launch was conducted from a vertical launcher against an electronic target at a very low altitude. The launch of the system was conducted to validate integrated operation of all weapon system components, including vertical launcher unit with controller, canisterized flight vehicle, weapon control system, etc., required for future launches from Indian naval ships. The first trial was conducted on 22nd of February this year, and this is a confirmatory trial to prove the consistent performance of the configuration and integrated operation. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has congratulated DRDO, Indian Navy and industry for the successful flight test and stated that this system will further enhance the defence capability of Indian naval ships against aerial threats. Secretary, Department of Defence Research and Development and Chairman DRDO, Dr. G. Satish Reddy, has complimented the teams involved in the successful flight test and said that this has paved the way for integration of weapon system on board the Indian naval ships.
Well, Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla will call on Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina today before concluding his two-day visit. On Tuesday, the Foreign Secretary held meeting with his Bangladeshi counterpart Masood bin Momen and also called on the Foreign Minister A.K. Abdul Momen and Road Transport and Bridges Minister Obaidul Qadir in Dhaka. Foreign Secretary Shringla discussed all the encompassing bilateral cooperation including connectivity with Road Transport and Bridges Minister and Awami League General Secretary Obaidul Qadir. The two sides also reviewed wide-ranging and growing cooperation between the two countries, including the cooperation in fighting COVID-19 pandemic together.
Army Chief General M.M. Narvane has said that it was rather due to the drills and exercises that the Indian Armed Forces have been practicing in peacetime that enabled them to deliver succor during the pandemic last year and this year as well. He was speaking at the curtain raiser ceremony of PANEX 21, a disaster management and humanitarian assistance exercise of BIMSTEC nations being held in Pune later this month.
The Indian Armed Forces are fully enmeshed in the whole of government's efforts to provide necessary support. Due to our wide footprint, we were quick to reach the remotest parts of our country. The entire effort could be successful only due to the mutual collaboration and cooperation between all stakeholders, all ministries, and on account of well-rehearsed drills and well-orchestrated resource management plan.
The Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, has warned that countries have to prepare against pandemics which may be used as a biological warfare by enemy nations.
Pandemics do not remain confined to one nation's boundaries. They travel across from one nation to the other. And therefore to state that individual nations on their own are responsible for taking care of the people is not the best way forward. I think it has to be a joint response, and we have to develop joint response mechanisms.
Well, PANEX, let's now take a look at India's COVID-19 vaccination data from across the country. With the administration of over 66 lakh vaccine doses in the last 24 hours, cumulatively, India's vaccination coverage has crossed 129 crore.
It is hybrid immunity which develops with natural infection and 1 or 2 doses of the vaccine in majority of the population in India, protecting the country from the third wave of COVID. Dr. Padmanabha Shenoy has stressed that hybrid immunity is extremely effective and is protecting the country from the third wave. He added that this protection will continue unless a new and very different mutant appears. Dr. Shenoy's paper, Hybrid Immunity versus Vaccine-Induced Immunity Against COVID in Patients with Autoimmune Rheumatic Diseases, was recently published in The Lancet.
Somebody who is already infected, who has some immunity against COVID, gets the vaccine, we generate a immunity which is called hybrid immunity is generated. So this hybrid immunity in a person who is vaccinated and infected is around 30 to 40 times that of someone who has received only vaccines. Around 70% of Indians have generated a hybrid immunity. There are countries like South Africa where there have been rampant infections, but they are lagging behind in vaccination. So these places like South Africa or Germany or UK are more susceptible to this Omicron variant than India, because India's majority of population already have hybrid immunity, which is much stronger than the immunity by other two means.
While Coast Guard has started operating the brand new upgraded version of the Advanced Light Helicopter, which is used for search and rescue of fishermen at sea and also controlling damage by oil spill. Our correspondent Nandita Daga visited a Coast Guard base in Gujarat and filed this report on the Coast Guard's aerial assets.
Pressure gradient of 8 hectopascal over the 30%. QNH reported 1015 hectopascal.
About 30 minutes back, we have received information response configuration. Technical officer Vinesh.
The Dornier 228 is a very potent platform. It is a long-range maritime reconnaissance aircraft, and when the pilots are given a briefing, the pilots, observers, co-pilots, everybody is given a mission briefing, which includes information about the weather. When they are given the briefing, they are briefed on the mission of the day.
This Dornier, as you can see in your bag, it's fitted with spray pods, so which can carry 191 kgs in each pod. There is oil spill dispersant, which can go into the water and break the oil form, and so that that oil doesn't float on the surface. It settles down on the bedrock, so it further prevents any harm to the marine life. We have been assigned to go there and check the situation. What is the damage there? We will assess the damage. We'll carry out aerial recce photography so that we can submit it further to our headquarters and see the further course of action, what can be done to save human lives and marine life also.
Advanced Light Helicopters, or ALH Mark 1, and over there the ALH Mark 3, they are ready for the mission. The mission is that two ships have collided off the coast of Okha, and these ALH will carry underslung loads, a pod called TC3, which will be carrying oil dispersant in it.
The previous version, ALH Mark 3, it was a kind of conventional cockpit. Mark 1, it was a kind of conventional cockpit. And in Mark 3, it is an entire glass cockpit. And all the sensors are available. The aircraft is entirely automated. And the potency in terms of, if I say, the endurance of the aircraft has increased, the load carrying capacity has increased.
In Porbandar, Gujarat, this is Nandita Dagar for DD News.
Well, let's now move on to our next segment, where we get you the latest from social media and also the websites in our segment Web News Review.
All right, for this, Rukma is joining us this morning. Rukma, good morning. Let us know what all headlines you've picked up for us from the social media platforms.
Well, you've covered almost all the stories, even those that are trending on the web, so it was not that easy for me to cull out a few stories. The first slide is from the Indian Express now. It says about how farm unions are discussing the government's proposal, which farm unions say they received on Tuesday to take a call on the course of the agitation. And they are, the Times of India talks about how they will be holding a meeting today to decide the future of the agitation. News is, is being spread by the Samyukt Kisan Morcha, which has been spearheading the farmer protests at the borders of Delhi for more than a year now, that it had received a written proposal, and it had discussed it at a meeting of 32 farm unions at the Singhu border protest site, and it indicated that most of the demands have been met, but they are seeking still a few more clarifications. Moving on to the next slide. The Hindu talks about Omicron, and it says the early indicators from South Africa suggest the Omicron wave may be milder, so it may not require hospitalization as the earlier variants of COVID had proved to cause, and is that the proportion of deaths than previous waves very small in comparison to previous waves, also a much smaller fraction of those admitted required supplemental oxygenation than in the earlier three waves. And this is based on analysis of patient records by researchers at the South African Medical Research Council. Moving on to the next slide. Well, the Hindustan Times talks about the Olympics. It says how Australia has followed the US in a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics, and Canberra's decision comes amid disagreement with China over a number of issues, including Australia's foreign interference laws, it says, and a recent decision to acquire nuclear-powered submarines. And the article goes on to talk about in detail about this particular issue, where politics somehow seems to have got mixed up with diplomacy and sports. Moving on now to some financial news. The RBI monetary policy meet is expected today. The Mint talks about what can be expected. A Reuters poll, it says, of 50 economists showed the RBI would hold its benchmark interest rate at 4% and the reverse repo rate at 3.35% at its December 8th meeting. That's today. Also, a tech view says Nifty 50 is likely making triangular formations and a consolidation can be expected for a few days. Meanwhile, in the last bit of financial news that I've selected, it talks here about how Jacqueline Fernandez could be in some trouble because the ED is likely to confront her over ties with conman Sukesh Chandrasekhar in a 200 crore rupees extortion case. Of course, all eyes on that now as financial embezzlement, gets entangled with someone from Bollywood. And finally, the Times of India talks about how NASA has selected a person of Indian origin, Anil Menon, and 9 other candidates from 12,000 aspirants for its moon mission. And most websites have a photograph of Anil Menon. I had to give that a skip because I wanted to take this picture as suggested by many of us here at the office about how Mount Sumeru that you can see in the background, the island of Java, it's spewing fumes now. It could erupt at any point of time, and here you see people fleeing, residents fleeing from the site. Well, how nature, spewing fury in various parts of the world, in Java this time around. Well, that's all as far as the web review from me is concerned. It's back to you, Anil and Preeti.
Thank you, Rukma, for that timely update. Well, that picture there clearly,
Yes.
that picture, as they say, pictures speak louder than words. Clearly, that particular picture there of that volcano eruption clearly leaving a lasting impression. One of the images that could be, the talking point, considering we all are talking about climate change and the after effects of it.
All right, let's turn focus to international updates in our segment Across the Globe.
Well, starting first up with that Biden-Putin video conferencing meet. As per the press statement released by the White House, US President Joe Biden held a video call on Tuesday with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss a range of issues on the US-Russia agenda. President Biden voiced the deep concerns of the United States and other European allies about Russia's escalation of forces surrounding Ukraine and made it clear that the US and allies would respond with strong economic and other measures in the event of military escalation. The two presidents tasked their task to follow up, and the US will do so in close coordination with allies and partners. The president also discussed the US-Russia dialogue on strategic stability, a separate dialogue on ransomware, as well as a joint work on regional issues such as Iran. Meanwhile, Kremlin says Putin and Biden will keep engaging in talks despite no breakthrough in it.
US President Joe Biden has warned Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday that the West would impose strong economic and other measures on Russia if it invades Ukraine, while Putin demanded guarantees that NATO would not expand further eastwards. The two leaders held 2 hours of virtual talks on Ukraine and other disputes in a video call about US-Russian relations, which have sunk to their lowest point since the end of Cold War more than 3 decades ago. The Kremlin, which said before Tuesday's meeting that it did not expect any breakthrough, has denied harboring any intention to attack Ukraine and has said that the true posture there is defensive. US officials have, however, said before the video that Biden would tell Putin that Russia and its banks could be hit with the toughest sanctions yet if it attacks Ukraine.
President Biden was direct and straightforward with President Putin, as he always is. He reiterated America's support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He told President Putin directly that if Russia further invades Ukraine, the United States and our European allies would respond with strong economic measures. We would provide additional defensive materiel to the Ukrainians above and beyond that which we are already providing. And we would fortify our NATO allies on the eastern flank with additional capabilities in response to such an escalation. He also told President Putin there's another option: de-escalation and diplomacy. The United States and our European allies would engage in a discussion that covers larger strategic issues, including our strategic concerns with Russia and Russia's strategic concerns.
Well, staying with that story, the Biden administration is in intensive consultations with the new German government over its response if Russia invades Ukraine, and believes Germany would be ready to take significant action if Russia launches an attack. Under Secretary of State for Political Affairs Victoria Nuland, in testimony to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, made the comment in response to a question about the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline to Germany. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told reporters that the fact that the gas was not yet flowing through Nord Stream 2, led by Russian gas giant Gazprom, created leverage for the West over Vladimir Putin.
I can't think of a more powerful way to punish Russian aggression than by rolling back what progress has been made and, if at all possible, prevent the Nord Stream 2 from ever being completed. Is that something that is being discussed with allies? Is that something that's being contemplated?
When it comes to Nord Stream 2, the fact is the gas is not currently flowing through the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which means that it's not operating, which means that it's not leverage for Putin. Indeed, it is a leverage for the West, because if Vladimir Putin wants to see gas flow through that pipeline, he may not want to take the risk of invading Ukraine.
Australia has joined the United States in a diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympic Games in Beijing. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has confirmed that Australian officials will not attend the Beijing Winter Olympics, joining the United States in a diplomatic boycott of next year's Games. Morrison told reporters in Sydney that it was not surprising, given the deterioration in the diplomatic relationship between Canberra and Beijing, that officials would not attend next year's Winter Games. Confirming the diplomatic boycott, Morrison raised human rights abuses in Xinjiang as one of the factors Australia had consistently raised.
The Australian government will not be sending any official representatives to the forthcoming Winter Games in China. For some time, people have been very aware that we have been raising a number of issues that have not been received well in China, and there's been a disagreement between us on those matters. But of course the human rights abuses in Xinjiang and the many other issues that Australia has consistently raised. We have been very pleased and very happy to talk to the Chinese government about these issues, and there's been no obstacle to that occurring on our side. But the Chinese government has consistently not accepted those opportunities for us to meet about these issues. So it is not surprising, therefore, that Australian government officials would therefore not be going to China for those games. Australian athletes will, though.
Well, Hawaii prepared for more rainfall after the Pacific Island chain was beset with torrential downpours that caused flooding, triggered landslide warnings, and prompted the state to take emergency action. A stalled Kona low weather system brought up to 12 inches of rain over 3 days, although the actual amounts varied greatly throughout the island mountainous terrain as per the National Weather Service. 5 people were rescued on Monday night from a swollen stream near Ohupali's highway, the Honolulu Fire Department said in a statement. Social media footage shot on Monday showed people in Honolulu wading through inundated streets and some residents pushing a car out through flood waters. Most of the rain has already moved away from the easternmost islands, the biggest island of Hawaii and Maui. The system should clear out of the rest of the island chain by the end of this week.
Journalists Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov are expected to receive their 2021 Nobel Peace Prizes during an in-person ceremony at the Oslo City Hall on December 10. Muratov and Ressa, who braved the wrath of the leaders of Russia and the Philippines to expose corruption and misrule, won the Nobel Peace Prize on October 8th in an endorsement of free speech under fire worldwide. The two were awarded for their courageous fight for freedom of expression in their respective countries, according to Norwegian Nobel Committee Chairwoman Berit Reiss-Andersen. Also, Muratov dedicated his award to 6 contributors of his newspaper who had been murdered for their work exposing human rights violations and corruption. Ressa, who has faced years of legal cases in the Philippines over the work of her website, said the prize would help her organization's mission.
Well, time now to shift focus and take a look at updates on COVID-19 from across the world. COVID-19 cases have begun spiraling once again globally. The tally of COVID-19 cases has crossed 26 crore 73 lakh globally. Total number of recoveries 24 crore 7 lakh. Total number of fatalities 52 lakh 85,000. The United States continues to remain the worst affected by the pandemic, both in terms of infections as well as fatalities. In terms of infections, over 5 crore 2 lakh cases of COVID-19. The death toll now passed that 8 lakh mark. Well, COVID-19 cases have also been mushrooming all over the European continent, with United Kingdom being the hardest hit. Over 1 crore 5 lakh cases of COVID-19, France having 79 lakh 87,000 cases of COVID-19, Germany 62 lakh 70,000 cases, while Italy comes in the fourth place with 51 lakh 34,000 cases of COVID-19.
Brazil will require that unvaccinated travelers entering the country go on a 5-day quarantine, followed by a COVID test, its health minister said on Tuesday, after its president said that he opposed the use of a vaccine passport. President Jair Bolsonaro criticized Brazil's health regulator, Anvisa, for proposing the vaccination passport to be required for arriving travelers to help prevent the spread of new COVID variants. Anvisa last month proposed adopting a vaccination passport for entry into Brazil. The Brazilian Supreme Court on Monday gave 48 hours for the executive branch to explain why the vaccination passport had not yet been adopted. Last week, at the suggestion of Anvisa, the government suspended flights from 6 countries in southern Africa where the new fast-spreading Omicron variant of the virus was identified. He repeated his criticism of COVID vaccines on Tuesday, saying vaccinated people can still be infected, spread the virus and also die from COVID.
But the Norwegian government has introduced stricter rules on Tuesday to limit the spread of COVID-19, including a cap on the number of visitors in private homes. The Nordic country had seen a surge in COVID-19 infections in recent weeks, followed by a rise in the number of hospitalizations. Households should not invite more than 10 visitors, and people must keep a distance of at least 1 meter from anyone who is not a member of the household. The measures imposed for an initial 4 weeks are less strict than in European countries such as Latvia or Austria, which imposed full lockdowns, but tougher than in neighboring Sweden, which on Tuesday recommended rather than imposed the use of face masks in public transport. A one-off exception will be made during the upcoming Christmas holidays, where each household can pick a single day to have as many as 20 visitors. Schools are exempt from the distance rules, but must prepare to introduce them if required.
And Poland has announced new measures designed to curb the spread of the virus, with capacity limits lowered in public spaces and remote schooling introduced. Deputy Health Minister said on Tuesday that from December 15, the limit on the number of people allowed in public spaces such as restaurants and cinemas would be lowered to 30%, not including vaccinated people, from the current 50%. Nightclubs will be closed from December 15th, and on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, only 100 people will be allowed to enter. Additionally, all travelers from outside the European Union's Schengen passport-free zone will need to show a negative test result from December 15th, and schools will return to distance learning for periods just before and after the Christmas holiday. While the number of daily COVID cases in the European Union's largest eastern member has stabilized, Poland has not reported any case of the Omicron variant yet. The country has so far reported over 37 lakh COVID cases and over 86,200 deaths.
Well, Sweden will reintroduce a raft of measures to curb the rising COVID-19 infections in the Nordic country, urging renewed social distancing and the use of masks in public transportation. Cases in Sweden have risen in recent weeks after a relatively calm autumn. Hospitalizations and the number of patients requiring intensive care are still among the lowest per capita in Europe, but have also started to creep higher. Swedish Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson expressed concern at the rising spread of infection. She stressed on the need to work together so that the situation does not get worse.
Philippines have reopened 28 schools in the capital city Manila for a pilot test of in-person classes, with the number of COVID infections dropping after stringent control measures, including 2 years of online learning. The country's health department has assessed the schools chosen for the pilot project as low risk for COVID. The project will last for 2 months and the results will then be presented to the office of the president. More schools will be permitted to open if with a promising result. The Philippines is among the last countries in the world to resume classes face-to-face.
Well, South Korea's new daily COVID-19 cases rose above 7,000 for the first time, and the Korean Prime Minister Kim Bo-kyum said on Wednesday that putting hospital capacity under strain as deaths and severe cases rise. Infections in South Korea have skyrocketed this month after the government began to ease restrictions under a so-called Living with COVID-19 scheme in November. The Korean Disease Control and Prevention Agency (KDCA) reported 7,175 new COVID-19 cases and 63 deaths on Tuesday, and hospitals are treating a record 840 critical and serious cases.
Up to 1 million COVID vaccines are estimated to have expired in Nigeria last month without being used. Now, this is one of the biggest single losses of doses that shows the difficulty African nations have in getting shots in arms. Governments in the African continent of over 1 billion people have been pushing for more vaccine deliveries as inoculation rates lag richer regions, increasing the risk of new variants such as Omicron now spreading across South Africa. In Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation and home to more than 200 million people, fewer than 4% of adults have been fully vaccinated, according to the World Health Organization. And time now to get you sports updates in Sports Track.
Well, Liverpool became the first English club to win all 6 Champions League group games as they completed a perfect journey into the knockout stage with a 2-1 victory over Italian club AC Milan. Manager Jurgen Klopp made 8 changes with qualification for the last 16 already assured as group winners, while the Italian league leaders went in search of the win they hoped would secure their own passage into the next phase. Liverpool entered the last 16 as one of the most feared teams in the tournament, with the biggest threats appearing to come from Premier League rivals Chelsea and Manchester City, along with Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. Well, meanwhile, in that opening test of the Ashes Test series between England and Australia, England in a spot of bother at 95 for the loss, or 96, I beg your pardon, for the loss of 5 wickets. So in the opening session of play, England won the toss and decided to bat first, but none of their batsmen failed to get going. Rory Burns scoring a naught, David Malan scoring 6, Captain Joe Root going for naught, Ben Stokes going for 5, Hasib Hamid the top scoring there with 25, Ollie Pope on 25 and Joss Butler on 29 there, as England look to make a comeback in this particular test match. So clearly the first test in Brisbane not going English way, still around 56 overs of action left in day's play, but clearly England on the back foot, with most of the wickets being taken by Josh Hasselwood and Pat Cummins, who have picked 2 wickets apiece, while Mitchell Starc picking 1.
And now we take a look at major events which made this day special in history. And India's glorious freedom struggle is one of the greatest struggles the modern world has ever witnessed. In this edition of Freedom Saga, we will remember freedom fighter Bhai Parmanand, social activist and freedom fighter Amarnath Vidyalankar, and freedom fighter and Hindi language poet Balkrishna Sharma. Take a look.
Today we pay homage to Bhai Parmanand, adorably called Bhaiji. Bhai Parmanand was an Indian freedom fighter born in Punjab. Since his childhood, Bhai Parmanand was inclined towards national integration as his family was associated with the Arya Samaj movement.
In October 1905, Parmanand visited South Africa and stayed with Mahatma Gandhi as a Vedic missionary. He was sent to the United States to coordinate the attempts by Indians overseas to help free the motherland. He was a founder member of the Ghadar Party. He wrote a book for the Ghadar Party called Tarikh-e-Hind.
When he returned to India, he was arrested in connection with Lahore conspiracy case. He was imprisoned in the cellular jail in Andaman until 1920 and subjected to extreme physical torture. The British King, George V, released him in 1920 as a result of a general amnesty order.
When Gandhiji started a national educational program, Bhai Parmanand was requested to give his full cooperation. Bhagat Singh was one of the students whom Bhai Parmanand had taught. Bhai Parmanand was also a caste abolitionist. He had started a caste elimination movement within Arya Samaj. Parmanand breathed his last on 8th of December 1947.
8th December is the birth anniversary of Amarnath Vidyalankar. Vidyalankar was a social worker and freedom fighter born in pre-partition Punjab in 1901. Vidyalankar was educated at an Arya Samaj educational institution.
After Vidyalankar completed his education, he plunged himself into the non-cooperation movement. When Lala Lajpat Rai founded the Servants of the People Society, Vidyalankar, along with Lal Bahadur Shastri, Balwant Rai Mehta and many others, became life members of the society.
Lala Lajpat Rai gave Vidyalankar the job of teaching history at Lahore National College, where Bhagat Singh and his associates were his students. After the closure of National College, Lala Lajpat Rai sent him to Hisar to assist famine victims in remote areas. In Haryana, he worked in the labour movement and in 1931 was sentenced to 2 years in jail for his editorial on the failure of the Round Table Conferences. He was also imprisoned for 2 years during the Quit India movement. During the communal clashes in 1947, he organized rescue squads for people. We pay tribute to the great son of soil, Amarnath Vidyalankar.
8th December is also the birth anniversary of Bal Krishna Sharma, Indian freedom activist and a poet of Hindi literature. Born in 1897 in Madhya Pradesh's Shahjapur district, he dropped out of college to join the freedom struggle.
In 1917, he came in contact with veteran journalist and editor of Pratap magazine, Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi. He became the editor of Pratap after the death of Vidyarthi ji in 1931. Sharma had been jailed by the British 6 times between 1921 and 1944, but this had little impact on him and he continued to contribute to the freedom movement. He was nominated to the Constituent Assembly from the United Provinces, now Uttar Pradesh.
Apart from his political work, Bal Krishna Sharma was also a renowned Hindi poet. He wrote poems with Naveen as his pen name. Some of his notable works include Kumkum and Urmila, among others. He was awarded Padma Bhushan for his contribution to the field of literature.
Alright, let's get you temperatures across major and prominent places across the country.
Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of news. But remember, we are in the festive season and the festive month. But be careful as that fight against COVID-19 still continues. We've got that Omicron variant still very much out there. Not much of research still there to let us know how, as of now, scientists are saying it's not very dangerous. But let's just be careful and make that festive season worth celebrating and enjoying. So please do not forget to follow those 3 simple steps of SMS. That sanitize yourself, mask yourself, maintain social distancing at all times. If you do that, I think all of us stand a better chance to see that Happy New Year.
Yes, indeed. Stay safe, practice all the precautions, because this is how we can act responsibly as citizens to make sure that the fight against the pandemic turns out successful. You know, from here on as well. It has been successful till now, but we need to keep up the momentum. And before we go, we know that Christmas cheer is in the air with lights, decorations and festive models of all things that scream holiday season. And before we wind up, we take you to Germany, where illuminated gardens with thousands of lights, creating ice landscapes and also Christmas decorations in all shapes and colors are witnessed. As we leave you with these beautiful visuals, take a look and have an equally beautiful day ahead. Bye-bye.
Take care.